Hello, American Patriots, and welcome to another episode of the Ducote Show. I am very happy that you're joining me tonight. You had many places you could be, but you chose to come here because we're the sworn enemy of the left, the sworn enemy of the Democrats. Basically, because when they're done listening to me, well, they piss their pants and they cry like little bitches. And that is what is needed all across this nation. Take political correctness and throw it out the window, and let's call a spade, and just double down on what's happening with these corrupt Democrats and far left liberals all across this country. It's absolutely insanity what we're watching. Tonight, we're going to discuss today's hearing at the Senate. Hearing was titled, "The Right of the People Peacefully to Assemble, Protecting Speech by Stopping Antarctic's Violence, Revealed Deep Divisions, and How Republicans and Democrats View the Sustained Protests That Have Gripped the Nation Since George Floyd's Death While in Police Custody." I want to start by saying that the FBI has opened up over 300 domestic terrorist investigations of Antifa and the members of Black Lives Matter that have joined them. While we are talking about that, before we get into exactly what took place today in the Senate, I want to share with you some of the rhetoric that came out of a senator's mouth. Tensions flared today in the Senate during the hearing on Antifa when a top Democrat senator, Mazin Hirano of Hawaii, walked out of the room after declaring she couldn't sit through Senator Ted Cruz's rhetoric speeches any longer. Now, basically, what Senator Ted Cruz had to say when addressing what's happening with Antifa and Black Lives Matter and the whole peaceful protesting hijacked, she did not agree with. She sees it completely different. Now, I'm going to play for you the audio. I don't have a producer right now, and I don't know how to show you the whole actual film of it, although I have it. And you can see it on YouTube if you want to see her ugly face. I don't anymore. But we're going to play this audio so that, listen very close to what this woman is saying, while keeping in mind what you've witnessed with your own eyes and heard with your own ears with the riots and the total chaos happening in Portland and Seattle, what happened up in Atlanta, Chicago. Think about those domestic terrorists and their actions as you listen to what this senator has to say. And then I'll play this and then we'll discuss it a little longer. I'll move this mic over so that hopefully it will pick up that speaker.
Senator Hirano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nobody is condoning violence against anyone, by anyone. This hearing is titled, quote, "The Right of the People Peaceably to Assemble, Protecting Speech by Stopping Anarchist Violence," end quote. But the hearing we should be having is one called "The Right of the People Peaceably to Assemble Without Being Beaten Up by Unidentifiable Federal Agents." That would address an actual problem lawful protesters are facing and the rest of us are seeing in this country. The murder of George Floyd has led to protests across the country and indeed around the world. In response, the federal government has used violence and excessive force to break up these protests. We saw this in two well-known examples in Lafayette Square in DC and in Portland, Oregon.
So I'll stop that there for a second. The federal government, in her fucking pea brain, is sending in troops to break up peaceful protest. That's what she said.
On June 1st, people were peacefully protesting around Lafayette Square by the White House, calling for an end to racial injustice and police brutality. Suddenly, federal agents under the direction of Attorney General Barr used chemical gas, batons, rubber bullets, riot shields, and flashbang grenades to forcibly disperse the protesters and clear the area. Clearly, this was done so President Trump could get a photo op in front of St. John's Church.
Let's stop there for a second and remind this dumbass bitch that they tried to burn down the church. So do you think we're going to allow the President of the United States to walk over to the church to show the crazy terrorist that you will not stop us? You think we're going to allow them to peacefully protest and burn down more stuff?
There was no anarchist violence in Lafayette Square.
No, they just tried to burn the church down. That's all. That's not violence.
In fact, the only ones using force were federal law enforcement agents. Portland is another clear example where federal agents use excessive and indiscriminate force to break up people gathered to peacefully protest. On July 4th, unidentified federal agents arrived in Portland, outfitted as if for war, wearing camouflage and heavy gear. To justify this unnecessary deployment of federal officers, President Trump and his administration have repeatedly portrayed Portland protesters as violent anarchists and members of Antifa. But in the past 4 weeks, what we have actually seen are federal agents beating up on nonviolent protesters, tear gassing them, and shooting them with rubber bullets and other so-called less lethal munitions. We saw federal agents shoot a 26-year-old nonviolent protester in the face with one of these less lethal munitions.
Okay, so let's stop there for a second and try and catch this up. She has to have a television, right? She has to. You can't make me believe that anyone in the year 2020 is not aware of what is taking place in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington every night. When the peaceful protests are over, the craziness comes out of the Antifa and the Black Lives Matter movement, and they go to attacking and trying to burn down federal courthouses and police stations. But that's okay with this bitch? And then she points to one guy that got struck by a rubber bullet that was peacefully protesting. My ass. Does she talk about the literally over 100 police officers that are no longer on the street tonight because they've been physically injured to the point of having to recover from their injuries, or the ones that are dead because of the riots that took place after George Floyd's murder? Oh, hell no. She doesn't address that.
And as you can see in the photo here, Donovan LaBella suffered skull fractures. He was in ICU. He required surgery.
Oh.
We saw federal officers beat a 53-year-old Navy veteran, approach them to ask why they were not honoring their oaths to the Constitution. And when Christopher Davis refused to react, when federal agents beat him and broke his bones, they pepper sprayed him in the face.
You need to be pepper
We saw
sprayed in
federal
the face.
officers tear gas moms, dads, and veterans who stood as a wall to protect peaceful young protesters. We also saw unidentified federal forces grab peaceful protesters off the street and force them into unmarked vans.
That peaceful protester she's referring to, by the way, were taking laser pointers and shining them in agents' eyes. And a couple of the agents are now blind for life. That's who got grabbed and shoved in a van. She won't talk about what happened to the officers, though, will she?
One protester described having his hat pulled over his face so he could not see. I am not alone in my deep concern over the federal agents' use of force and violence against protesters in Portland. The Attorney General of Oregon has sued the federal government to stop federal agents from using the kind of, in quote, secret police tactics, where they take people off the street and force them into unmarked vans. State and local officials in Oregon have...
Let me just remind everybody of one thing real quick. This is a sitting member, a senator in the Senate of the United States of America. Her rhetoric is no different than that of AOC and Alejandro Mar and Rashid Tlaib and all the other batshit crazy Democrats that spew and twist everything that takes place in America.
Have demanded that federal forces leave Portland because they have brought violence, not peace. And the inspectors general of the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice have decided that the federal officers' use of force against protesters in Portland were concerning enough to open an investigation. The Justice Department's Inspector General has also concluded that the federal officers' use of force against peaceful protesters near Lafayette Square was concerning enough to include in its investigation. Despite these facts, we are having a hearing on protecting peaceful protesters from anarchist violence. But what we've seen in Portland are peaceful protesters in need of protection from federal officers. Let's be clear, once again, no one is condoning any violence by law enforcement or by the protesters. But by focusing only on anarchist violence, this subcommittee is furthering President Trump's efforts to distract us from the underlying issues that millions of protesters have been calling on us to address: the systemic racial injustice in our country.
Oh, wait. Now she throws the race card in there. Keep in mind what she just said, because there's more to come on that.
President Trump is deliberately trying to undermine the massive protests for racial justice by dismissing them as anarchists and Antifa. To perpetuate this narrative, President Trump has ignored factual evidence showing that white supremacists have hijacked peaceful protests to incite violence and stoke racial.
There it is. Antifa has been hijacked by white supremacists. That's what this crazy ass libtard bitch just spewed out of her mouth.
Conflict, such as in Minneapolis. He has ignored studies showing that white supremacists have killed at least 329 victims in the past 26 years, while anti-fascists have killed no one in politically motivated attacks. And he has ignored what some have called the largest movement in American history, the millions of people who have marched peacefully in the streets following the murder of George Floyd, demanding change. If this subcommittee wants to protect Americans' right to peacefully assemble, we should be focused on preventing federal officers from beating up protesters, tear gassing them, and shooting them in the face. That's the hearing we should be having today.
Okay. I can't listen to this fucking crazy ass bitch anymore. Let's just move on here, shall we? You couldn't make this up if you tried. I mean, literally, you could not. It's like she just crawled out of a cave that she's been in for 50 years and is a complete and utter idiot with no education, no communication with the outside world in any way, shape, or form. You can't be this stupid, can you? Well, yeah, you can. She's living proof that you can be that stupid. There are no peaceful protesters being attacked, beaten, shot, pepper sprayed, tased by city police, by county sheriffs, by state police, or by any federal government agencies. It's when the peaceful protest turns violent and they start looting and throwing shit at the police that they react. Period. End of discussion, you crazy ass Hawaiian bitch. Now, let's talk about this for a moment. Sometimes I don't think you listen, Hirano told Cruz at a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing as he finished up a nearly 10-minute speech. So how many times have I had to say that we all should be denouncing violent extremists of every stripe? Cruz said, does that include Antifa? And she shot back, I don't have time for this. I hope this is the end of this hearing, Mr. Chairman, and that we don't have to listen to any more of your rhetoric speeches, she said to Cruz. Thank you very much, and I'm leaving. She packed up her shit and started heading to the door. Well, I appreciate, as always, your kind and uplifting words, Senator, Cruz said. And I would also note that throughout her remarks, she still did not say a negative word about Antifa, nor has any Senate member of Congress or in the House, for that matter. He urged her as she was walking away to denounce the leftist extremist group. You're welcome to say something negative about Antifa right now, Cruz said. She stood up and walked away from the microphone, responded to Cruz with something that was inaudible before heading out of the room. Okay, she declined to speak so that this is the position of the Democrat Party. It was a tense ending to a hearing that kicked off Tuesday afternoon with Democrats and Republicans disagreeing on what the hearing should even be about. Cruz focused on rioters and anti-government activists that have hijacked peaceful protest and unleashed harm and violence in certain cities like Portland. He kicked off the hearing by playing a video that was showing what peaceful protests look like with Martin Luther King Jr., with Gotti, with the March for Life. And then he showed what we see today on our TVs. Well, not if you watch CNN or MSNBC, because they don't want you to see it. Their actions are profoundly racist, Senator Cruz said. The rioters destroy minority communities, minority businesses, and minority lives across the country. This shouldn't be complicated. Peaceful protests must be protected. Riots must be stopped. Democrat politicians should be held accountable for letting their cities burn by making the police stand down. Meanwhile, Democrats focus on the white nationalist extremist groups and the federal government sometimes aggressive tactics in place like Portland and Washington, D.C., in dispersing crowds that they view as largely peaceful. She played her own video at the start of the hearing. What she said is violence against peaceful protesters and disappropriate use of force. And what she showed was only the reaction of law enforcement officers to someone who just threw a fucking brick at them, or shot them with fireworks, or threw a frozen water bottle at them. She didn't show that part. She showed just their reaction part. And of course, yeah, that looks bad if you want to spin it that way. She said the right of the people peacefully to assemble without being beaten up by unidentified federal agents should be the name of today's hearing. That would address an actual problem lawful protesters are facing and the rest of us seeing in this country, she said. She's obviously seeing something that we're not. Again, let me remind you that the FBI is opened up over 300 domestic terrorist investigations right now against members of Antifa and Black Lives Matter as a result of the riots. Now, let's talk about this senator from Hawaii real quick. She has said in past statements, I quote, "White supremacists make up a lot of Trump's base." That is correct. I'll repeat that. White supremacists make up a lot of Trump's base. She has said Trump is a danger to this nation, referring to William Barr in his testifying recently in Congress. She said, "Now the American people know that you are no different from Rudy Giuliani or Kellyanne Conway or any of the other people who sacrificed their once decent reputation for the grifter and liar who sits in the Oval Office. You lied to Congress. But now we know more about your deep involvement in trying to cover up for Donald Trump. Being Attorney General of the United States is a sacred trust. You have betrayed that trust. America deserves better. You should resign." She has reprimanded all Republican men for failing to step up when it comes to confronting sexual misconduct. She said, "To the men of this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing for a change." Referring to border detention centers along the Mexican-U.S. border, she called the detention centers very reminiscent of what happened to the Japanese Americans during World War II, when President Roosevelt imprisoned well over 100,000 people of Japanese descent in makeshift camps for the duration of the war. Now, I've been to those concentration camps that she's referring to. And they're not. Matter of fact, the people that are in these holding facilities, while they try and figure out who the hell they are and whose kid they brought with them, what crimes they have, if they're a member of MS-13, or if they're a murderer, if they're a rapist, they brought over drugs, or if they're actually trying to escape to America because of the oppression they're under in their country. While they're in these facilities, they have something that they've never had in their life. They have health care. They have great food, 3 meals a day, clean water, television, radio, games, air conditioning, heating if it's cold, a nice warm bed, clothing, personal hygiene items. They're taken better care of than they've ever been in their life. They have access to religious services. They have access to better educate themselves. The kids have school. Even the parents, or the guy who came over by himself for whatever reason, maybe smuggled drugs, has access to education while they're in these facilities. I've said this many times. I've shared this openly in videos in the past that, I was born into and raised into a heavy Democrat family, as the South was back in the early days. I was born in 1962. I was a Democrat up until I went into the United States military, and first realized that the Democrats didn't give a shit about the military and that if we were going to go to battle or do our actual job, what we're trained for, the Democrats in office were fucked. For Republicans in office, at least we'll have what we need to conduct warfare. And that's the purpose of the military. From there, I learned about the other things that the Republican Party stands for that I was told they didn't. I learned that my own party were the racist in America, that they were the racist bigots. I educated myself on the history of both parties going back to Abraham Lincoln. And then as time went on, after I'd switched to the Republican Party for my voting, and I got to see each year progress of what's happening in the Republican Party, what's happening in the Democrat Party, realize that this is the party, the Democrat Party is the party of hate. I mean, literally, they hate, and I know it's a very big, strong word, they hate black people. And if you're a black person and you're a member of the Democrat Party, you hate your own fucking race. That's a gimme. Look at Chicago. Look at Portland. Look at Seattle. Look at Oakland. Look at Detroit. New Orleans, Baton Rouge. Pick a city that's out of control with a huge crime rate and black on black crime in neighborhoods that cops just don't even go to anymore because they're going to be attacked for trying to protect and serve. It's all run by blacks, black Democrats. It's like they want to keep the race down. But yet they spin it to make you believe that it's Republicans. So, and I know a lot of Democrats and a lot of far left liberals watch everything. They monitor what comes out of my mouth. we know that for a fact. Listen up, you little snowflakes. You go find me a city, any city in the United States of America, where the Black community is thriving, just like the white community. And then find me the cities that aren't, the ones that are like war zones in Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria. And look who's running them. If that doesn't prove my point, then you're not capable of comprehending common fucking sense. The Democrat Party doesn't give two shits about you if you're Black. From founding the KKK to fighting against freeing the slaves to Planned Parenthood for the sole purpose of murdering Black babies. To right this very moment, in every city in America where the Black community is going to shit, and it's like a fucking war zone in the Middle East, there's a Democrat mayor running it who's appointed a Democrat police chief. You can't dispute that. You can just not do your homework and say, well, that makes you a racist bigot, Doug Ducote, because, oh, look at you if you're a skinhead. You can say that all you fucking want. The facts matter. And when you start spewing bullshit to turn it around and make Republicans the enemy of America, Trump supporters or white supremacists, cops are like Hitler stormtroopers, then you're part of the problem. You're why we're where we're at today. You're disgusting parasites that just can't stoop low enough. You're disgusting. And I wish you'd just pack your shit up and get the fuck out of America. Because you're not wanted. If you live in a community in America and that community has gone to shit, you better band together and vote out the Democrat that's put you there and is keeping you there. But no, you're too stupid to do that. You will still elect another Democrat over a Republican that will continue to destroy the hopes and dreams of your youth, that will continue to add to the drugs and violence and the crime in your communities. That's what today's Democrat Party is all about. There is only one party out of the two that actually gives a shit about all Americans, regardless of your race, regardless of your sex, regardless of your religion, unless you're radical Islamic Muslim. And that is the Republican Party. And it pains me that there are so many people out there in America that just will not look at the facts, will not educate themselves, will not look at history. In fact, they want to tear it all down so it can repeat itself, you dumbasses. Folks, that's all I got tonight. Thank you for joining me. We're very close to the election in November. If you're a Republican, you better get off your ass and be prepared to go to the streets and start canvassing, to use the phones, volunteer, join your local Republican Party, get involved. You don't have a choice unless you want to see the country that you claim to love become no different than the rest of the countries on planet Earth. You know, when Trump referred to places like Mogadishu, Somalia, the shithole countries, well, that's what the Democrat Party wants from this country, America. They want you to live in a shithole country. They're that batshit crazy. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving the United States military, our veterans, our brave men and women in blue that are out there risking their lives day in and day out to protect and serve their community for pennies on the dollar. Our first responders, their families, our Angel families, our Blue and Gold Star families, our president, and our country. God bless you, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful and blessed evening. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe, ring the little bell, and go over to DouglasDucote.com and sign up for your email address. We're getting all that working again with the website, and we'll be getting messages out there back to you, the American patriots, of what's important in this country. God bless you, everyone. I'll see you soon.